Welcome, dear listeners, to another episode of Servant Leadership Library podcast, where we dive deep into the minds of remarkable leaders who prioritize service above all else. I'm your host today, Nicholas Paulukow, and we have a truly special guest in our virtual studio today. He's the driving force behind one of the most beloved pet supply stores, a leader who's not just making waves in the business world, but also in the hearts of animal lovers everywhere. Join me in extending a warm welcome to the former CEO of That Fish Place, That Pets Place, the one and only Rick Amour. Rick is now semi-retired and chairman of the board and serves as the company's EOS integrator. He is also a treasurer of the nonprofit animal rescue Centerville Pet Rescue. Now, everybody, That Fish Place, That Pet Place began in 1973 as a small aquarium store. Tens of thousands of people from all over the country and Canada shop today there in their 88,000 square foot facility located in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. In 2015, the company was purchased by long-term employees Rick and Christy Amour with the goal to continue to grow the business the Leibowitz family had successfully established. The Moores then successfully added a group of long-time That Fish Place, That Pet Place employees to their ownership group to continue to refine the vision and offer what customers have expected for them over the last 50 years. Wow, that's amazing. So welcome, Rick. That's an amazing story, and what an amazing organization. We're so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Well, thanks, Nick. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's excellent. What an amazing story. So I understand, I did a little homework on you, that you've been with the organization for 27 years. Can you kind of give our listeners a little understanding? And now you own the organization, so that's pretty amazing, or one of the owners, right? And so can you give us an understanding of how you got started? What drove you to stay in the organization for so many years? Was it a great boss or leader? Could you kind of give us all an understanding there?
Yeah. So my college career was not stellar. I was although I enjoy learning now, and in fact I've realized over the years that learning is my primary driving force in life, but it was not in my college years. So I struggled. As I started as a computer science major.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. That's new. I learned something new today.
Back in the 1980s, learning Fortran and COBOL and programs like that no longer exist.
Right.
And I after being on the dean's list and the president's list in my first semester, I was a college dropout by year 3.
Oh no.
And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't. I just wasn't sure. I jumped from major to major and was not very disciplined and didn't know where I was headed in life. I was young, like so many that are employed at that fish place now. And I needed a job. Mom and dad said, if you're gonna stay here rent free, you're gonna find a job. So I did, and it was working on the sales floor at that fish place, that pet place, and I literally never left. I have had the same job from dropping out of college as I, at the same career at the same place. Yeah, for my entire life practically. So
wow, that's amazing though. I mean, not a lot of us, right, aren't necessarily meant for that college education. You talk about like self-learning that you developed over your career, right? But that's pretty amazing. You must have a lot of great talents and ability to, develop within such an organization. I mean, you came at an entry level. Like, what were you able to prove to be able to move up in the organization? What skills or abilities did you bring there?
Well, I said I did drop out of school, but I was always I was always focused on something.
Okay.
It was just at that time the wrong thing. But once I started working there, and it was a really unique business. I knew nothing about the pet industry, and at that time, the aquatic industry, and this business, for what was supposed to be just a temporary job, and it was a family environment. So it was a fun group of people. Let me just say that. So those early days are some of my fondest memories. They started a great business, and it was so successful and growing so quickly that I knew this was something special. And that's when I got interested in learning how businesses run.
Okay.
It was never on my radar to want to have a business or manage a business, but I saw what was happening there, and it really piqued my interest. And I dove back into school. I eventually went back and got my bachelor's degree and my
Wow.
MBA.
Wow.
I saw the importance of IT in the future, and my MBA has an IT specialization,
Okay.
which will definitely paid off later in my career and after purchasing the business, I can tell you. Um, but yeah, I just discovered the world of business, and I was
Oh,
fascinated by it, and it engaged me in a
yeah.
way school in general just didn't. And so it was great. That's what drew me in.
That's pretty cool because a lot of us say, right, the generations of kids kind of go into school right now. It's kind of like everybody should go to college, but if you don't necessarily know what you want or the passion you want to drive, you kind of shown that, right? You found your passion, you went back and you got educated in those areas. I think that's pretty amazing. It takes a lot of determination though to do what you did, meaning kind of going from working back into the school. So congratulations on that. That's an amazing journey, right?
Yeah, it was. And I will, and back, to I've listened to a few of your other podcasts, and there's a theme, and you hear it over and over again. And I know we'll talk about servant leadership, but um, they're all so focused on their continuing education,
Hmm.
despite the achievements that they've all had. They
Mm,
continue to seek and learn and share,
mm.
and that's what intrigued me about business
Ah,
and having a career and owning my own. Because as you know, as a business owner, um, you're in a small group of people that
right,
have certain goals in life and commonalities. Although we may all do it a little differently, there's a passion that
right.
underlies all those people, and learning is just an element of that.
Isn't that? That's well said. It's really well said and articulated because you're right. It is the theme of like constant learning and the passion to not just accept the same, right? To make a difference. One thing that was sounded really cool is we all talk about culture, but you said, hey, this family business is really what drew me in. So that sounds like an intriguing culture. What part of the family business, right? In our area, we have a significant amount of family businesses, and you hear a lot of struggles with transition into next generations. What made it so unique of a culture that you found that it empowered you?
It was an energy, honestly.
Okay.
It wasn't, you could certainly, it didn't really have at back then in the 80s. You didn't really talk about company culture and
Right.
and
Yeah.
and a mission and those things. So I would just call it an energy at that time,
Okay.
because they didn't define it. How would
Okay.
I define it now? Yeah, probably that. Probably as an energy. It was like everything that that you did back in the day, right? Because they were one of the first in that niche.
Mm,
And the founders saw an opportunity in the aquatic segment, and no one was just doing aquarium fish and aquarium
right.
keeping. So they found this niche where it felt, and this isn't to detract from what they accomplished, because it's not that at all. It's that they found such a great niche, and they knew how to give those people what they
What they
wanted.
wanted. Yeah.
That it felt, and again, it was hard work, but it felt that everything you tried worked.
Yeah,
And
it was like gold, you know?
at the time, it was right. It was like,
Yeah.
wow, okay. And now you had to manage that growth, and
Right.
that's a challenge in itself. But that's what really caught me, in that
Okay.
energy and that excitement around that growth was was addictive,
It,
frankly.
it it is neat, right?
It
It's like an energy. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
later in your career, you pine for those days.
You do. You're like, well, I think it's kind of, I said to a mentor group of mine, is I said, listen, like, I was in the fire service, and I said, man, just working with the people in the fire service, it's such a family. Like it's such an energy and such a bond, and we're all working towards the same thing. How can I find that in business? And they all looked at me and said, you're not. Like it's a different bond, but there's can be an energy and an excitement when it's in the entrepreneurial kind of like building. But it's interesting kind of to see. Now, do I have this right? As a kid, you guys started at like was one of your locations at Park City at the mall?
Okay, so the founders were partners in yes, Dr. Pet Center
Oh,
at
that's right, Dr.
Park
Pet.
City
Okay.
Mall, and that's where Bernie Leibowitz and his wife Sandy, they recognized the potential in just that aquatic segment,
Okay.
and they developed direct buy relationships with a lot of critical vendors at a time where you could do that, and it was such a specialty segment that those manufacturers weren't that large, and they really got in at the right time with an
What it
expanding
was.
market, and had the gumption to go out
Wow.
there and take that risk and focus on that small segment and see what happened. And boy, they just really hit a home run.
Hit a home run. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, 88,000 square feet now. That is like unheard of even today, right? Like I don't think there's any other pet or aquarium store that is of that size, is there?
No, there's one. There's one in Germany that's a little bigger.
Oh, in Germany. Well, you
In
got the
Germany.
US market worked out.
We do. So yeah, there is one place, to my great disdain, in Germany that is 2,000, because we used to say world's largest pet store. Now we can't. So it's
You just
okay.
have to put a little addition off the back, maybe, and get the square foot.
Don't think we haven't talked about it. So there may be some just enough of a expansion coming.
Oh, that's amazing. What an amazing story. And lastly, we'll move on then kind of into some leadership items, but it's really neat to see a lot of how an entrepreneur operates. And what I think is really cool is to hear you explain that, like how they sold that energy and really motivated and evolved and developed so quickly in the market. I think it's pretty interesting. Myself being in the IT field, what we've seen is like the last 10 years have been explosive in developing, and now everybody's kind of has technology. So now just selling or marketing or working that type of business is completely different because everybody has someone, right? And 10
Right.
years ago they didn't. So relevant to where you were in your business, and I'm sure that changes as well. You probably have more competition than you did before. But it is fascinating. One small tip for everybody: years ago, when I owned another company, I mowed the previous owner's lawn. That's my claim to fame for that fish place. I had the I had the opportunity to learn. I learned a lot, though. I learned how generational businesses kind of transitioned and learned and understood the difference between kind of the founder and the second generation. So there was a lot to learn. Even though I was mowing the lawn, I asked a lot of questions. So he probably got sick of me asking questions, but I learned a lot and understood about like vendors, right? You mentioned that earlier, like how to purchase and how to work with them was a really pivotal understanding for me as kind of getting to business too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I will let you move on. I just wanted to say it's I really have seen this business go from essentially a startup
Yeah.
into a mature business, and saw the industry change over the years, and that kind of insight is, that's the one thing that I don't hear a lot because I haven't been anywhere else.
I
So
see.
being in the same business for that amount of time, only I imagine only an entrepreneur can really, you know, uh, appreciate that. But having seen a segment of a market from its infancy
Yeah.
through to essentially a maturity 30 years later, and how it's all changed has been, yeah,
It's been
what has kept me in it so long.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's intriguing though. You say that. And so what was your last position prior to then owning the organization?
So I was COO prior.
Okay.
So
Okay.
essentially in EOS terms, which I know you're an EOS company, and I hope that comes up.
Yeah, it does.
Because
That's the next
okay,
segment.
good. Yeah, if it didn't, I was going to force it on you, Nick. Um, so yeah, I lost track of my thought there.
Oh,
But
from the
oh,
COO,
so
you're
I was
saying that you're
COO.
running that.
So right, so I was essentially an integrator
Okay.
for the prior owner. He was
Okay.
very much the visionary type. And had I known that at the time, um, it would have been interesting to try and implement EOS
Ah,
because he was the visionary type, and it didn't we didn't recognize those roles at the time
at the
and their
time, yeah.
importance, and it would have been interesting to see how that would have
And it's
affect.
fair to say that that was the second generation, right? So you're saying that even the second generation came with a lot of vision as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty unique too, right?
Yeah, and because they had to transition, and that's when the other pets
Mm.
came in. That second generation was responsible for getting us into those into the other pets, out of the not out of
Ah.
aquatics, but also incorporating the other pet categories into the business.
Okay, so they kind of, as they would say, the next 10x jump came from adding the next components. That's pretty cool. That's pretty amazing because we see a lot of generational businesses, and sometimes the second generation or third kind of maintains it. It doesn't. It seems a little bit less active in taking the risk to kind of jump and do anything overly risky. You mentioned that earlier, like the founder kind of really took a lot of risk. Um,
Yeah,
and
and so did that second generation.
really, that's amazing. Yeah.
What really made it, and so essentially it was coming into that transition to a third generation, and
Okay.
when we acquired the business, and it had a lot of challenges at the time. It
Mm,
was it was another period in time where e-commerce was exploding. Cloud-based technologies were new.
mm.
We were one of the first companies in our industry, certainly, and maybe anywhere, that was jumping into the cloud on an ERP level.
Wow.
And we did that in 2009, I believe. So we were an early adopter of cloud technologies. There were some headaches with it, but there were a lot of challenges at the time that I think just that next generation, it got very technical, the business,
Mm.
and they just felt like that was the time. So we were able to acquire it and help through that transition period.
Okay. That's pretty amazing. That's awesome though, from a standpoint of, founder, second generation, and then you as the COO, taking ownership, and then you continue to grow it as well. So knowing you've kind of made some leaps and bounds. So we'll get into that EOS part now, right? So you used the term, or during our intro, we said, hey, that you're the EOS integrator. So for listeners that don't understand what that means, give us an understanding what the integrator is from your perspective, and kind of a little bit about the EOS model, maybe where you found some success within that model.
Yeah, maybe this is where I should tell my story. Now, I will, and I apologize to your listeners because I'm going to try and make this quick, but I will just say that when I met Nick, we were looking for our IT services for our business, and at the same time, it was the point where Chrissy and I, my wife, when we bought the business, we said we give it 5 years, and then we
Okay.
were going to decide what we wanted to do, because I'd been doing this for a long time. So the
Okay.
plan was, let's see how it goes for 5 years, then we'll decide what to do with it. So we had decided that we wanted to bring the employees on that had helped us to turn things around and go
Okay.
through a difficult period, um, transition to business. And so we knew that was always kind of part of our plan, our exit
Okay.
strategy. Um, but there was a piece missing, and
Mm.
I didn't know what it was, and I was trying to find it. And I don't know if anyone out there is familiar with the Duran series of books on quality management, but you got to remember, this was a guy who still was fairly fresh from his MBA and thought there was only one way to do things, and that was Duran's quality handbook. And if those that aren't familiar with it, I'm sure everyone's familiar with total quality management and those types of things. And this is a 1,000-page manual that is everything from basic quality management, good leadership practices, to some pretty heavy analytics and Kaizen events, and those of you that might be black belts out there, and I forgot what it's called. You gotta forgive me. But the ISO 9000, all those quality level things, they're glazing over. Like I'm going through this book with my executive team. And they're glazing over. And the whole reason I was doing this was because I wanted them to have the same skill set that I felt like I had in order to run the business, so that I didn't have to worry about it, and they had what they needed to be successful. So I was trying to simplify this very complex manual into some simple good practices to follow. And one of those things, all along was having a strong culture and a mission. And we worked on that from the very beginning when we acquired the business.
Okay.
So we had a good foundation, but I needed that next set of tools. So I was out looking for, and I'm almost done. I was looking for those IT
no, it's
services.
Fine. It's great.
And mission and culture was important to me. So that's how I found one-to-one in Nick's company. Was you had a real strong sense of culture, and it came through your website. I could feel it from what I was reading there. It was important to you. And I thought, well, this is a good fit for us. So you came out, and I kind of told you our situation, and that I was looking for some kind of tools and I think I even showed you that Duran book. And as it thudded down on the table, you laughed. And you started telling me about EOS, and EOS is exactly what I was looking for. It took all those amazing things I read and learned in Duran and my MBA, and it boiled it down to such a simple to use philosophy and set of tools that I knew that was it. I'm like, this is it. I read. You said read Traction, and I got a copy of Traction, and I read it the next day. I was like, this is it. And of course, they're all looking at me like I'm crazy again, because I spent the last 3 months trying to introduce them to this crazy Duran handbook that I know they thought I was nuts. And now all of a sudden I got this new thing, and they're thinking, oh, this is just some new thing.
Here goes Rick again.
But I have to tell you, Nick, and I can't thank you enough for it. Here we are, over 2 years later, and we are using EOS religiously. I mean, we are just following every aspect of that as well as we could, I think. And the buy-in from the executive team has just been amazing.
Awesome.
And so I owe you that, and I still owe you a dinner.
Oh, I can't wait.
Don't think I've forgotten.
I can't
wait. So we have to do that. But for those that don't know, EOS just really, to me, provides you a set of tools where I was looking to transition out of the business. So if there's anybody out there that's thinking about transitioning their business, it's a process. It takes a number of years. Ours took a lot of time to just fix the business and get the right culture in place. EOS was what finished it off. It gives you a set of just good tools to utilize in your business and make sure that things are running the way they should. Gives everybody a voice, and it really is it's an MBA on paper, or a website, or an app that you can use on your phone, and it just keeps you focused on the right things.
That's well said. I think it's so funny, right? I remember the day that your team was there, right? And we got into this conversation, and I think we started talking, and they're looking, going, I thought this guy was here for like IT services, but we haven't talked about IT services yet, right? and then we followed up and chatted. And you're like, wow, like you executed already? He's like, oh yeah, my first rock is to onboard you. And I was like, wow, you guys executed. It felt like in like 2 days, right? Like, you guys, that's amazing story, but that's so impressive on how quickly you were able to, no pun intended, integrate that into your business. And you're absolutely right. I think we found the same thing, right? Where you take that NBA language and bring it down to all the way to the most entry level doer, to be able to connect with the organization in a way that we could never, we tried all of these tools and tactics, and this is just a simple in the terms of it takes energy and time, but simple way to educate and empower everyone, which I I'm super happy for you. So excited. I'm kind of a little jealous, like, right? Rick hits EOS. He executes as the integrator, and then all of a sudden has an employee-owned company, semi-retired, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm doing something wrong here. Like this guy is killing it. So I'm here today to learn from him. So I think we all should listen up a little bit more, right? A journey through an entrepreneur. And
careful, Nick. Don't count on me too much. I've got plenty of flaws, though.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. We're the whole thing that we talk about, and we find a trend, right? And you said it earlier, but for those that are listening that might be new in leadership, we use this term servant-led leadership. I mean, from your perspective, how or what does that mean to you? I mean, and how does that align to kind of your core values?
Yeah. So when I, and I had, like I said, listened to some of your podcasts, and I thought about this quite a bit. So for me, anytime I guess I'm trying to define something for myself, I look at the antithesis. So what's the antithesis here of a servant leader, right? They're they're a dictator. They're top down leadership. They're domineering. They're critical. They're if something goes right, they take credit. Right. If something goes wrong, they want to know who to blame or who to fire. Right. So I think we know those leaders. To me, servant leaders are the opposite of that.
Okay.
They're putting the spotlight on others. They're challenging them with tasks and or in our case EOS terminology, rocks, right? Important things that are going to move the company forward, and trusting them with that responsibility and not micromanaging them through it. Giving regular feedback, really sitting down and being able to, number one, listen, which is something I'm not good at. And I've really been working at. That's
Aren't
one
we
of
all?
the yeah. Well, again, not to keep going back to EOS, but one of the things that you do during your annual is you give something that they're one of the other people is good at, right?
Oh, yeah.
And or excels at, and it's something they could be better at, right? So mine has always been listening. I don't listen enough, so I've been trying to be better about that. But it's a critical element of servant leadership, and that's the piece I certainly struggle with. I don't listen enough. But you're really focused on others, right? Trying to meet their needs, whether it's your employees or your customers, but you're focused on delivering for them first and above all. And in our case, pets, right?
Yeah,
Our
that's
owners
so
and their
well
pets.
said. That's so well said, and how you articulated that, right? You kind of took what would be not a servant leader and what is, and that's pretty amazing. I mean, you have a unique ability though as the owner of retail, right? So retail, I can imagine, is quite a bit different, right? I mean, you have a leadership team that might be established, but then you have a lot of staff that come and go. They're in high school or other areas. How have you found that, like EOS or other things have allowed them to get involved? Like, how do you get somebody that's part-time involved in the mission and vision? Like, how do you lead them through that? I'm very curious because that's got to be difficult.
It is extremely difficult. And we're constantly trying to figure out how we can do better there.
Okay.
So what we do is do what we haven't done before and focus on what we can do with those people that do. They're transient. Some of them come and go, right? College students, they'll work maybe summer break, or the opposite, they'll work during school and then summer break they go home. So it's difficult to connect with them sometimes. But we have our all hands meeting quarterly that they attend,
that's
company
awesome.
events. We really try and do a lot of reach out internally. We have a full-time trainer, and that the trainer's one of our owners. And so he spends a lot of time not just teaching them about the product or the services, but teaching principles of EOS and making sure they understand what the people analyzer is, right? Which is just a
Right.
way of evaluating people to make sure they're a good culture fit.
Mm,
We use that extensively. So really, we focus on the culture portion of it.
I see.
If they can learn, and get some tools, whether they use them, at our business or in
Or
college
somewhere
or
else.
somewhere else, wonderful.
Yeah.
So we just try to give them an introduction to what a good first time job looks like,
Okay.
and not worry too much about the rest.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll come back. Certainly, maybe they'll feel good about the experience, and
Yeah.
that's good for us. So we're happy about that.
You do use your key word that probably many businesses that don't run in the US really talk about it too much. You use the word core values, right? So, like, that's really apparent. I mean, I shop at the store, right, personally. So when I go in, the people know the product and service, but they're also passionate about it, right? I mean, we have a young lady in our office named Pam. My goodness, I think she was on like one of your Christmas cards with their dog. Like, I mean, she's like living and dreaming this pet life. You know what I mean? And she appreciates how excited everybody else is that works there. That must be some level of core value. I don't know. So, I mean, how do you infuse that? Or it's got to be so difficult though, because like our job report just came out today, right? That I was reading for our industry, and it says the biggest item that every executive or CEO is working on right now is hiring talent. And geez, I mean, do you use core values to select those people, or is it like, oh man, there's a breathing person in front of me, I better figure out how to hire them, right?
Well, sometimes it feels that way. Um, but we've learned that if you don't hire based on those on
Mm,
culture, if they're not first and above all a culture fit, do not. We would
love that.
rather have the vacant seat, than have a wrong culture fit. So we absolutely hire based on culture. We are fortunate because, to your point, they love pets, and that's what attracts them to us. So it makes it a little easier probably than for a lot of other companies,
Yeah.
when it comes to hiring, in that people are so passionate, back to your point
Mm,
about pets, that it does drive some good people our way. So we're
mhm.
fortunate in that respect, but we struggle like any other business to get help. Um, so it is a challenge, but absolutely culture has to remain key when it comes to hiring decisions.
I think that's well said. I think too, do you find that you have a higher retention rate then with employees, maybe that aren't just the college students, but do you find since you implemented EOS, do you have a higher employee retention rate for that reason?
Yeah, we do. And we've actually reduced it. And I'm going to get this number wrong, but I think, and I apologize to our HR team. I think about a 38% reduction.
Wow.
And I know that sounds specific for guessing, but I'm pretty sure it's around there, reduction in our turnover rate since we've been
Wow.
using culture to hire and fire, and making the changes via EOS and giving them a voice in the
Wow.
business has really made a difference, and more transparency. All those things have contributed to improving our turnover.
Those are amazing numbers, right? So anybody that's in your business is probably going, I am jealous. I'm going to Google this EOS thing, right? But I mean, it takes effort. You've put a ton of effort into doing that, and you should be commended because that is absolutely amazing. You talked about like kind of empowerment too. Like, what initiatives do you drive or take part in to kind of empower? Those entry level employees all the way up to people maybe that will start like maybe a supervisory role or whatnot. Like, what tools or tips can you give the listeners on how you're utilizing EOS to empower them as well?
Yeah. So one of the one of the key elements of EOS is really just having that regular interaction
Mm,
with everyone. So we have more touch points, I think, with our people than we used to.
okay.
We have a measurable that we utilize both for our internal and external customers, right? Our
Okay.
our employees as our fellow team members, as well as the customers that we have to be aware of. So we have a 5-10 rule. Basically, when you're within 10 feet rather of someone, you're at least aware that they're there. And when you're within 5 feet, you greet them, say hello. So we try and encourage interaction. And then there's always some opportunity because the turnover, certainly better, is still fairly high. Right. So opportunities do arise, and those that see it, recognize it after a while. We have supervisor and training positions.
Okay.
So you're kind of on deck, right?
Yeah.
So that's where you get a little more access. You start attending more intense L10s. They're not, we do meetings for everyone throughout the company, but they're generally not a full-on L10. And
10, okay,
I apologize for anyone who's not familiar with an L10, but I mean, it's a weekly 90-minute meeting essentially. So we don't have the convenience of being able to take someone from the cash register and put them in a 90-minute meeting. So we do short meetings, so they get at least a voice. It's a reduced agenda, but it gives them a voice. So yeah, we try and give them opportunities, and certainly at least a voice within the company. And I think that that certainly is a benefit and helps.
That's amazing, though, the intentional focus that you put on that. That's really cool measurement, right? Like, we all look at dollars and cents, and you're measuring kind of that interaction, right? It goes along with an employee, but also goes along with your retail customer that's there, right? Like, so everybody says, like, what's measured has success. So that's pretty cool. I learned something. That's really neat. And I think others that are in your business should take that as something to pay attention to, right? Like, they seem to measure more at the leadership level, but are they measuring all the way down in the organization? When you implemented EOS, what were some key things that you identified that maybe you needed to improve, right? Or something that you're willing to share with the group that will help someone that's kind of going through a similar journey?
I wouldn't even know where to begin, Nick. It seemed like a never-ending waterfall of things we could do better. Well, as you know, you do a company rating at the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
And then you do it, each year to evaluate how you advance. Well, I think we went from a 20 on a scale of 0 to 100 to I think 80 in the first year.
Wow.
So to me, that just says how much we were able to take advantage of, and it had a direct impact on things. So you can talk, for example, you can talk data and you can talk reporting.
Yeah.
Or you can talk scorecards, and you can focus on just the things that matter the most rather than trying to figure out what matters, right? That's one of the great things I got out of EOS, because I'm a data guy, right? I'm like, and I'll give myself, analysis paralysis, and I'll go down the wormhole as far as it leads. And if there's even the slightest fraction impacting the result, I'll obsess over that rather than focusing on the big number, right? I'm in the decimals, and so anyway, it forced you to decide what number really matters. What number matters, and what number matters so much that you have to watch it weekly.
Right.
So you can react weekly.
Right. Yeah. So it's more of like learning about what's the leading indicator instead of a lagging one, right? Like, we all look and say, hey, did we make any money this month? Well, that already happened. So what I think I'm hearing from you is you're like, hey, listen, if we measure it, we can then change the outcome before the end of the month. Right. And that's pretty cool. How do you, what are maybe some outcomes like at the retail level, like a cashier or whatnot? Like, what do they measure?
So they're measuring primarily the amount of customers that they're capturing their information, right? So email captures, things like that.
Okay.
They all down there, they'll primarily focus on the 510 role, even a cashier, recognizing when there's a customer queuing up in line, calling them to the register, that interaction, but it's focused on that interaction. But certainly we like to capture customer addresses, because if we can market to that customer, we know they'll continue to shop, and we can notify them of events and things like that. So
Okay, that's awesome. Well, could it kind of changing subject slightly, like what advice would you give to other CEOs or leaders who are kind of interested in adopting kind of the servant leadership approach, right? Because some you mentioned earlier, like those ones that dictate, they just feel like, well, if I don't tell them what to do, it'll never get done, right? And you use the approach of like servant leadership is about kind of like coaching and mentoring. What advice would you give those that are listening, on the benefits or even maybe how it even applies to you as a retail organization? Because some would say, well, listen, Rick, you're only going to have that employee for like 3 months. Like, why are you putting all this effort into them? But it seems like there's a lot of benefit to it from what I'm hearing.
you know what I think it is? I think there's a lot of personal benefit in it.
Mm,
I enjoy it. It makes you feel good. If if you have to work at it, maybe you shouldn't even,
mm,
you got to think about it, I guess. If you're not attracted to the idea of impacting someone else and their life,
mm,
um, I don't think you can learn that. I don't think you can make
mm.
yourself desire that. So first and foremost, make sure the desire's there, because you're gonna have to think about putting the other people ahead of yourself,
Right,
which isn't natural for a lot of entrepreneurs and
right.
business leaders. Are you willing? Is it always about the money? Is it always about
Mm,
the revenue, or is some of it about the people?
right,
And you know that leads to better things for you, honestly.
right,
You spend that time, and you're willing to invest in your people, and you'll benefit as well. So
right,
certainly there's that, but don't do it for that reason.
right.
If you're doing that for that reason, you're doing it for the wrong reason. Um, this isn't just another way to make money or another approach to leadership. I think you have to be kind of drawn to it, and want to reap the rewards of helping others.
Right.
I've been lucky. I mean, I feel like a lot of luck's involved. So why not, share some of the reward a
Share
little
that.
bit, and uh, you know, spend some time or effort on helping them achieve what you've been able to achieve. And I think that's a noble goal. So if you're doing it for
Mm.
that reason, you're doing it for the right reason.
Yeah.
And then there's tons of great things like your podcast you can listen to,
To
uh,
learn more.
to learn more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but make sure you really want to. This is essentially the calling that you feel
That
like
you're calling to.
you have right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said a really great statement there. Many statements, but one that really triggered me was, that you do it for not yourself, right? So, like, that's the true definition I feel of a leader, right? One that's doing it now that I'm leading, it's not about me anymore. It's about them. And so, how am I going to do that? And then the second thing that reminded me is we all, prior to getting on today, I said, hey, have you read US Life? And right, so my 2024 goal is to kind of concentrate more on that, right? And it says doing what you love with people you love, making a huge difference and being compensated appropriately with the time that you have now for other passions. And you are like the vision of that. I think it's so cool, right? Like you have so much passion and love for the people that you work with and that you drive towards. You can just hear it in your voice, which is, I think, a really empowering leader, and people want to follow people like that. So kudos to you. And it's neat to hear the difference that you're making. I think you started earlier by saying, hey, one of the owners, right? So like you went from working in a business to taking ownership to now making other owners. Like that made probably a huge difference in their lives too. And now it gives you maybe a little bit more freedom to do the passions that you love. So, kudos on the EOS life. I think everybody strives for that, although it takes a lot of work. It just doesn't happen overnight. But
No.
tell us a little bit about like that journey, like what drove you to making other owners in the organization.
Um, really, it was. You kind of realized. I kind of realized how lucky I'd been, and
Mm,
but and not just in having a group of people really that were willing to stick it through what was a
mm,
difficult transition period.
I see.
Um, and they earned it. I felt like, they really earned it. And this isn't just a paycheck thing.
Right.
They're as passionate about this business as I am. Um, Chrissy felt the same way, and we decided we had to make that happen somehow. So, yeah, we were just thankful for what they had done to help us get the business to where it was, and wanted to give them the same opportunity.
That's amazing. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, many people that would be in your position are like, finally, I own it. Like, I'm not going to give it up. And you immediately went to kind of this go-giving mentality, which I think is really what ends up being the result, right? Like the sustainable positive change, which I think is really amazing. You're very unique in that. Many people that I talk to are just like, I can't give it up. I spent all this time, and you're saying, hey, these people, rode the wave with me. They deserve it. So you deserve a lot of kudos. That's amazing.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
That, or maybe it's just been I've been doing this for 30 years, and,
and you're done. No,
and I'm done.
Oh goodness. Well said there too. So you started our conversation about like always learning, right? You said that you started at college, stopped, you started learning again, went back to school. So for all those that are listening, is there any specific books or learning tools that you found were impactful? Because there's a lot of people that I hear many times. They're like, well, I've been working somewhere so long, I should just be a manager, right? And when they realize that they don't understand what a manager is, right, they really get stunned by like, well, it's not about me. Like, no, it's not. It's about the people you lead. So I find it's really impactful to kind of learn, maybe some things that you could share by any of the reading or resources.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm probably going to name the things that everybody else always names. Seven Habits.
Oh, that's a good one.
Is a great book.
Yeah.
Of course, anything by Jim Collins or Lencioni. Big fan. Gino Wickman, of course. Right?
Oh yes,
got to read Traction. But I mean, all those are great books. There's a lot of great leadership books out. I can't think of any others offhand, but those are the big ones. Personally, I have a lot of interests, and one of the things I like to do is use news aggregators. Like I'll use like a Flipboard app, and then it pulls information based on different categories and things.
Oh, that's cool. That's a neat one.
Yeah, and then what I'll do is I'll take one of the categories and I'll rotate it once a month. So I'll pick something that maybe I have never had any interest or any exposure to, and I'll plug it in there, and then I'll just learn something new about it for a month. And you'd be surprised how many times you'll find something in there that resonates, or be like, well, wait a minute, okay, well, they're doing that in that industry, why couldn't we do something similar? Yeah. So that I like to do. So I try and read a lot of different things. Nick,
little nuggets.
I can do a little bit of a lot of things, but I can't do any one thing really well.
Well, that's what we all do, right? We're leading. We're trying to gather information and try to disseminate it and send it down to the team. So I think that's well said. I'm going to take that one as a tip. I'm going to learn from that one. That's pretty cool. As we kind of wrap up here, Rick, is there any parting feedback you'd like to give the listeners, or anything that you feel would be pertinent to them?
No, I think I'll just say that I think servant leadership is a noble pursuit. It's certainly well worth the time and effort. It'll pay back to you 1,000 times over by just connecting with a few people over the years. Even if that's the limit of your impact, you can really make a difference for people. So I think it's wonderful that you're doing a podcast about this and giving a voice to servant leadership and bringing some of these guests on that can give some insight into their experience, and hopefully it leads to some more servant leaders out there.
Oh, that's well said. Thank you, Rick. We appreciate you very much. And everyone, as that wraps up another fantastic episode of Servant Leadership Library. I'm your host, Nicholas Paulukow, and our esteemed guest, Rick Amour, the former CEO of That Fish Place, That Pet Place. Rick, thank you for sharing your insight and experiences in the world of servant leadership, and for reminding us all that leading with servant at the forefront can truly make a splash in our industry, even the world of fish and pets. Listeners, remember to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations and valuable lessons on servant leadership. Until then, lead with kindness, serve with passion, and always strive to make a positive impact wherever you go. This is Nicholas Paulukow signing off. Take care, everyone.